Good to go. Yep.
Okay. All right, welcome everyone to Providence City Administrative Land Use Authority meeting. Morning is March 23rd, 9:30 a.m. We're in the Providence City office building located at 164 North Gateway Drive. We have 3 items on our agenda today. I'm Scarlett Bankhead, and to my left is Max Pierce. To my right is Rob Stapley with the Administrative Land Use Authority. We also have our city manager, Ryan Snow, city reporter, Ty Cameron, zoning, Diane Campbell, stormwater, Colton Love. And then it looks like we've got some folks here for our various agenda items. Our first item is a conditional use for an in-home salon. And do we have someone here for that? Okay, are you Michael? Okay. The Administrative Land Use Authority will consider for approval a request by Michael and Davey. Tavi Thorpe for an in-home salon located at 349 South 100 West in Providence. So, Michael, if you want to come up and have a seat in front of that mic right there, that would be great. And you want to give us your review?
All right, this application was received back in February, and it included the business plan, site plan, and a statement describing the request. Rob Stapley inspected the infrastructure in February as well. Aaron Walker is working on getting an inspection done. That is still pending. Has he called you? Has he contacted you? Okay. We look at findings of fact for this conditional use, and we look at Utah Code 10-9A-507, Providence City Code 10-35, which allows the city to impose reasonable conditions. We use Providence City Code 10-61, which is the use chart, which allows hair studios in home by conditional use. And then we use the zoning map revised June 2022. The conditions of law are basically the same as they were. As I mentioned before, that all these things are committed or permitted by conditional use. The applicant meets and the requirements of the findings of fact with the following conditions. The applicant will apply for a business license after they're approved here. The applicant will meet the requirements for a home business listed in Providence City Code 345. The applicant will meet the requirements listed in the fire inspector review, which will be discussed with you and with us. He'll send us a review letter after he does that inspection. The applicant will operate the business in the manner described in the business description. Approval by the city of any submitted application or paperwork does not alleviate the owners and or their agents from their responsibility to understand and conform to local, state, and federal laws. Providence City's approval is not intended to and cannot be construed to allow any laws to be
Did you see a copy of her report? In the email that I sent you with the agenda on it.
I missed it. I've been pretty sick for the last couple of months, so
Oh, sorry.
it was my fault. I apologize. I didn't see it.
Okay. Do you have any questions about what she
I don't.
talked about? Okay. For the record, will you just state your name?
Michael Thorpe.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Rob, Max, do you have any questions, concerns?
I didn't have any, no.
I don't either. It's a pretty simple, self-explanatory proposal.
We do need you to follow up with Aaron Walker, our fire
Absolutely.
marshal. And so that will remain a condition that until you can get him there. Check your emails, because I thought he emailed you, but he's supposed to try and call you too, but I thought he sent you a couple of emails. So
If you did, I did not see them. I apologize. I had a pre-major surgery back in October last year, and since then, I've had 2 other surgeries
Okay,
involved with that.
okay.
And that's kind of kept me out of focus. I apologize.
No. That's fine, no apology. Perhaps, Diane, why don't you, after the meeting, maybe you could email Mr. Thorpe Aaron's contact information so that you can connect, because we have to get that taken care of. We can't let that go away. So, all right. That being said, I entertain, are there any staff members that have any comments? Okay, thank you. That being said, I'd entertain a motion to approve the conditional use based on the findings of facts, the conclusions, and the conditions in the staff report.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion by Max Pierce, second by Rob Stapley. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Voting unanimous. The conditional use is granted. Once we get the letter from Aaron.
Okay.
Letting us know.
There you go.
Okay,
And I dismissed them.
yes, you are. Thank
Okay.
you. Thanks
you
for
so
taking
much
the
for your
time, and I hope you get feeling much better.
Okay, thank you.
You have a good day as well.
All of you well.
Thank you. Okay, our next item on our agenda, we will consider a request by Providence City for a shop expansion located at 350 East Center in Providence. And Rob, I'm gonna have you actually go down and sit at the table for a minute. And Diane, do you want to come up and say your bits?
All right, this application was received, this commercial site plan application was received March 20th. We also got Aaron Walker's inspector, the fire inspector review on March 20th. So for findings of fact, we look at Providence City Code 1085, which talks about commercial zone districts and site development. And we use the zoning map revised June 2022. Conclusions of law, the property is an R112 zone. The land use authority may add to the conclusions of law as a result of this meeting, and the application meets the requirements of 1085 with the following conditions. The applicant will continue to meet all relevant federal, state, county, and province city rules, laws, codes, and ordinances. The administrative land use authority may add more conditions during discussion on this project. And approval by the city of any submitted application or paperwork does not alleviate the owners and or their agents from their responsibility to understand and conform to local, state, and federal laws. Providence City's approval is not intended to and cannot be construed to allow any laws to be violated.
Okay. This is in a it is in a R112 zone. However, public buildings are permitted uses in that zone. So it is a permitted use. Rob, do you want to just explain for a minute what this building is?
Sure. This shop expansion will have double doors and on both sides, so we drive through shop. We've got 2 new pieces of equipment that don't currently fit within the dimensions of our current shops, our new 10-wheeler and our factory that should be here soon. And in order to get those out of the elements, it's ultimately a truck shed,
The doors on the north and south.
north and south side. So we'll be relocating our chip pile in order to create a drive-through.
So there's nothing, are they just walls on the east and west sides?
Correct.
So kind of get into a little bit of, gotta do some landscaping up there to meet the actual code. Can you,
Accomplish that on the east side, the west side will actually be snow storage because the roots are going to both slope into each other. It's an alleyway, and all that snow is going to dump in between those 2 buildings. And
There's only 6 feet, right?
6 feet between the buildings, correct?
Is that? I mean, I don't know. Have you talked to Aaron about that on fire?
Aaron's going to do this.
okay,
I guess I did see the letter in my head.
you have any other questions, Matt?
I don't think so. Well, I guess maybe, I mean, I'm assuming it's got power only, there's no water, nothing.
There'll be power and we'll plumb water into it at some point. But we'll do the preliminary plumbing so that we can have a hose bib inside. Wash a truck down or something rather, but
Well, hooked to your sewer then or not?
no, there'll be a drain system that'll tie right into that existing line drain system that goes down to that pump. And
But it will go into the storm system.
correct to this one pond that's in front of the shop.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Nothing else for me.
Okay, if you'll just figure out some landscaping, that would be great.
We can dress up the whole eastern side.
Okay. That'll work, that'll meet the things as far as setbacks and things. There's plenty of distance from the perimeter. We're working on the interior. We'll work on that a little bit. And then if Aaron's okay with the proximity of the building, since it's being developed as a commercial site plan, it's a little different there on the proximity of the building, so we're good to go that way. Since Rob is the applicant, you wanna say your piece now?
Yeah, or potential conflicts with interest or something around there, I'll abstain.
So I will make the motion that we approve the commercial site plan for we approve the request by Providence City for a shop expansion located at 350 East Center in Providence, as shown on the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and conditions with the staff report.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Scarlett, second by Max, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, and now we've got the Blackstone crew, it looks like. If you gentlemen would like to come up and pull another chair up, and if y'all three want to come up, that's fine. Somebody come up. And then Diane, you want to? You can pull a chair up if you want to come up. Right.
This application was received back in May. This has kind of been an ongoing project. It's a very large project. It was initially reviewed by the Land Use Authority on May 25th and was continued for findings of fact. We look at Providence City Code 1085, which is commercial zone district site development. 827, which is installation of connection to system for sewer. 818, which is installation of water lines. 849, installation of connection to the stormwater system. 1094, which is frontages, curb, gutter, and sidewalk. And then the official zoning map, which I need to change the date on that because it's not March 2021 anymore. Conclusions of law, the property is located in a commercial general district zone. The Land Use Authority may add to the conclusions of law during this discussion, and the applicant meets the requirements of 1085 with the following conditions. The applicant will continue to meet all relevant federal, state, county, and province city rules, laws, codes, and ordinances. The Land Use Authority may add more conditions during the discussion on this project. And approval by the city of any application or paperwork submitted does not alleviate the owners and or their agents from their responsibility to understand and conform to local, state, and federal laws. Providence City's approval is not intended to and cannot be construed to allow any laws.
Thanks, Diane. Do you have any questions? Did you get a copy of the agenda with the staff report? Okay. All right, if you would take a minute and just introduce yourselves into that mic, so we have it on record.
Colby Gill representing Blackstone. And Tyler Monk, Civil Solutions Group.
Okay. All right. Um. We got your responses to our just some discussion notes from February 23rd, and then you responded. And then I believe we sent you, thought I had them in this packet, but I must have left them on my desk. I believe we sent you a response to your response,
Yes,
and that's kind of where we're at.
yes.
Okay.
Those are from 360.
So let's talk about that.
Okay, perfect.
All right. How do you, Max, do you want to ask questions first? Do you want them just to explain their response to us? What would you like to do?
Don't know, well, I don't have any questions on it. I guess I've got one question on that, or maybe just a comment is regarding the plans that are in this submittal. It looked like, and I didn't have time to go back and look at the old submittal that was originally submitted, but the one sheet shows a blue line that originally I thought was the floodplain, but now I can't read the text on it, so I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's more of a phase line for landscaping. Maybe you can tell me it's on the sheet.
Yeah, that's a phase line.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify that, like I say, when I zoom in on that text, I can't read that text, but that's why originally I thought it was the base flood line.
Right.
So that's my main comment is that I think in this plan set, we ought to have the base flood or the floodplain shown on there.
Yes, yep, and we're getting that one in there for you. So what we're taking from the flood report that we put together, those cross sections through the river. We're coming back and building those by interpolation across that side of the site. And so we'll put that line on there for you.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, and I think the main purpose for that in my mind is just so that everybody can see from a plan perspective what is in floodplain versus what is out. So
right. And it's kind of, as you saw in the report, it's kind of interesting there where sometimes the BFE is higher, sometimes the riverbank is higher. And so we're going to try to differentiate between the two there.
Okay.
And you'll have those elevations list on there so that they can correlate it with other aspects.
Yes. So we have those BFE elevations at each of those cross sections. And so we will note them at those, and then we'll have to just interpolate from section to section.
So when all is said and done, the structures that you're planning, not utilities right now,
Right.
but the structures that you're planning, how far away is all of that from the line in the sand? From the,
Flood line. So none of the structures are in the flood zone. I'd have to measure that distance for you, but they're well away from it.
okay. Periodic, well, periodic is not the right word. Every so often when you're showing that base flood elevation, you show a dimension to the building
Oh,
as
yeah.
well.
Yep.
Because there are some requirements on distances, or else then depending on where you're building the distance, if it's past the 50 feet, then or is it still 30? Guess it's still 30 until we adopt a new ordinance. If it's past the setback, then we're okay for the most part. But if it's within that, then we've got to make sure that the structure meets what it's supposed to.
Right.
So if you'll show those dimensions so we can make sure that we have everything.
Yep, can do.
I might add too, during this discussion, probably the Administrative Land Use Authority is also designated the role of the floodplain manager and commonly known as the floodplain administrator. So we are also acting in that role as we review this particular site plan. Rob, what would you like to?
I guess trying to understand the phasing a little bit better when it comes to the landscaping.
So which page?
Multiple, that's what makes this.
Probably see
This
it.
is a pretty
Probably
fun
201.
set of plans to try to grasp the phasing
Yeah.
because of that very reason. But,
Right.
um,
201 probably gives you the best.
my biggest question, I guess, is really that the empty space between the highway and your building and how that phase comes into play, or does it ever get landscaped?
And maybe I'll let the Blackstone guys talk to that. It's currently being left as pasture area with future opportunity. And so I don't know if there's.
That's all we have planned to do for.
Other than like take it to the park strip,
Yeah,
but everything on the property side of the sidewalk, it'll go in and along the highway. In that open space should be left as is, because that sidewalk that meanders around it. Is that plan on going in?
the walkway around there, that should be going in with phase 1. It's just the actual pad, the horse pasture area. That won't have anything in it right now. It's just going to be flood irrigated, my understanding. They'll other ready to do something. I do have some questions on the comments if you want me to bring some of those up at this time or.
Ready for,
Yeah, sure.
okay,
Off of these comments, I don't think any of these questions will come by surprise to you, just as we clarify. So on comment 1, I know we've been back and forth a little bit on this one. Being that you guys are requesting for the water line to go to the highway and extend north of the east property boundary. We understand that that has been in the city comments for the last few divisions. The understanding we had from the meeting that we had with you guys on February or November 29th, I think was the date of that, was that it was agreed upon that that could just be stubbed at the highway location as opposed to going north. With the forethought of any future expansion that would be fine, that line would likely be coming from the east side of the highway. And if anything was developing north of Ballard Springs, like the 500 South Champlin, the opposite side of the road, though, talking the west side, would probably connect from Champlin and go through that property and connect over to the Alder property. And so from that discussion in that meeting, which was different than the city comments, the first time we kind of went through that, our understanding was that it was agreed upon that we could just put the hydrant and the stub at the highway location and not be piping all the way to the north property. And so we saw that, we changed in the plans for that to happen. Then we saw the comment come back again that said, hey, take this to the north property line. And so we just want to discuss that. We felt like we came to some answers with the city when we had our in-person meeting here. And then, so that comment took us a little bit off guard when it came back again, so.
Ryan, do you want to pull up the parcel viewer? I think I misunderstood the way you thought when you left that meeting.
Okay.
And maybe I'm the only one, so if I'm the only one that misunderstood you two guys, if you're on the same page with them, that's okay.
Some on the same page and some not. With
Because I know we talked about, I know we talked about the east side connecting, and that's why you would take it to the east, to the highway. But there's a gap between you and, I mean, there's a property right directly to the north of you.
Right. Yes.
So how are they to connect if they can't get through your property?
So the understanding there we had was that they will have from our water line that we're putting in up through Alder's property, they would have an availability for an immediate connection to the west. And they also could connect from the Champlin to the east, but they'd have to bore under the highway, which if they come from our side, they're gonna have to bore under Ballard Spring. So there's a boring that comes into play either way. And so that was my understanding, was that they had that connection from the east that was going to be available over there with this south, I think. And then also when we put this in through Alder, they'll have connections from both sides and don't need it from the south as well.
Couldn't they go along the state highway and not bore under Ballard Springs, just go over the top of the culvert on the edge of the road?
That could maybe be a possibility. I don't know what the depths are there between the clearances between the culverts and the road, but there would be some crossing there, whether it's boring or trying to go over the culvert or something.
On a timeline, look at things. It's, I hate to, guess one or the other, but looking at, ponds and the called Range Bowl or something
Range Bowl,
property to the north versus Hoff's property where the cabin is on the south side of the Ballard, and Champlin's property is, in my mind, is highly likely that Range Bowl and the Champlin property is going to come into play long before the Hoff property. Therefore, to get these loopings to occur in the right order of events, that's what's driving my thoughts that somebody's going to have to go across that frontage of your property to get to that water main, because it's likely going to go to the Range Bowl and then shoot across the south. Once that becomes an intersection,
wrong, is that not where Fifth South would come over?
the south is in line with the Range Bowl property.
If you look up,
Yeah.
so I
Just
guess,
come over here.
I guess the loop that I'm wondering about, if Range Bowl loops from Fifth South and to the west and connects with the line that you're putting along the west side of the properties, then they've got a tie, but you don't. You're on a dead end line, right?
Right, we are, which works for our fire flow. Which that's why we originally had actually stopped our fire line, our water line back at the pasture, because we didn't need a loop line for flow. Then per the city request, we brought it out to the highway. And with the thought that once we push the water line out this way, and this one comes through, they have a tie from both sides that they can use. And they don't need ours to come traveling up the highway. And so we had originally stopped it there. We pushed it out to here for that meeting. And then the other request is now to take that and take it all up to the north. And so that's where it's that piece. Yeah, that might making sense. Is that was the understanding we had. So because this line going in up here will all go in with our property. We're going here all the way up there. And so they will have access and likely a roadway coming through for their second access here. And Fifth South from Champlin would have that water line coming through right there, which I believe is a city plan, right? Because that line's going to come that way. So we just feel like they have the dual connection. We don't need looping for our fire flow. If they develop over here, they can bore under the highway. And that connection would then be made probably up into Champlin or something there in the future. And there would be then a loop that way, but we had no need for the loop, and they would have dual access there.
How do you feel about that?
My main concern was if the water line needed to go north along the highway, I would like to see it going before all of your landscape improvements.
Right.
So
Which makes sense from that perspective. Yeah, if it's going to go north, if it has to go north, now would be the time.
And I guess I was thinking that, ultimately there will be, I assume there will be a crossing at this south with the water line. And I didn't anticipate crossing highway twice, the way you're suggesting, cross it twice, but.
Or they'd have to cross Ballard on the east side from Champlin's property. If Hoff's ever needs another dead end line.
Well, it could go east through Hoff's property and there's undeveloped land all the way up to that subdivision there. So it could come back in time to this south.
Yeah, Hoff wouldn't necessarily have to go across the highway.
In that aspect, yes. And so there is some merit to your statements. I see that. Loop lines are always my fan. I'm a huge fan of loop lines. We've got a lot better fire protection with a loop line, because when you start doing double tandem flows, you can bring the water line right down to below state minimums easily with tandem flow, and with dead end lines, you can get those scenarios to occur very easily. And I don't like fire companies not understanding where all the dead ends are. If they don't, they come from Logan and they don't know our water system, and so they don't understand where the dead end lines are to truly watch and be extra careful when they start pulling off of those pumpers. And so having a loop just safeguards the water system. And in the subdivision scenario, quite often you require that loop, and where you're, I guess, not subdividing, maybe don't necessarily have that ability to push that to that north line. I highly suggest and recommend it for water system reasons and your fire flow true needs. That's a large building. And so when I think about, all Aaron Walker's worries with just sizes of homes, and I look at the size of this building on a dead end line, maybe it meets the current fire flows, but in a dead end scenario, it causes me long-term concern if they ever did have to fight an issue in that area.
Well, there's future development there as well, and I don't know in the pasture area that you're talking about. I mean, I don't know what that might be someday.
Right.
It's supposed to be commercial. I mean, really, truly,
Yeah,
there are supposed to be retail stores along the front of that property at some point in time. I know you haven't planned it that way, but that's the way it really is supposed to be there, so.
Okay, we're aware of that.
Is that piece it's not subdivided off. At this point, you're not subdividing off the commercial piece. Just as a city perspective, we encourage and plan and try to make sure that we develop from property lines to property lines so that we're not stuck between a city trying to do another property owner trying to go into an adjacent property owner. Of course, you have the problem because you're developing before they're ready. So you have that problem. You can see from your perspective the problem that trying to develop through other property owners are. And that's, from my perspective, that's one thing we like to stop is if we can have one that's developed, if they're from property line to property line, then the next person can pick up and move on. If everybody had developed before you, that would have made it a lot easier for you to develop. And that's from the staff perspective, that is what I look at is that you would have loved to have us do that for everybody ahead of you. If they had come and developed before you, that would have been, instead of you having to go through all the different properties. That's what I think from my end. That's what I want to avoid. That's why going north makes sense from that perspective. If you were subdividing, it was another parcel, and so you're going from property line to property line. And then when the commercial came, and that's when it came, then for me that fulfills that. And that's why I asked the subdivision, because that commercial will come at some point, or at least we hope. I hope you guys hope that. As a city, we certainly hope that. And then that would develop that. And so if it were another parcel, then it was like, well, as long as you went to your parcel, then whenever you sold that piece, then they take it on their parcel. And so anyway, that's from the staff perspective of development. We can get it from parcel to parcel, from property line to property line, then we don't have neighbors fighting over, well, who's going to pay to go into my the adjacent property owner developing. Does he pay? Do I pay? Does the city pay? It just, well, you can see that. You can see that on the other side, and we'd love to have. I mean, we want you to develop, but it's a lot harder. You can see if that happens. So anyway, if it's possible, obviously yours is going to be the commercial, and it would be ideal to develop that someday. But
Yeah, the other thing, Rob talked about fire flows and stuff, and I agree with that. I think that the other thing to consider is that if there ever is a leak or some reason the city needs to shut that main down, then they basically have to shut your whole complex down. It's only fed one direction. I don't know what that does to your business, but probably not ideal. Whereas if you had a eventual loop there, then you would be able to get fed from a different direction.
They get put on 24-hour fire watch scenarios in that situation.
you guys understand where you're talking,
Yep.
around this line.
It's still going to be a dead end line when it ends on this side of the property. They just want the bunches 200 feet or more.
But
line.
if the idea is to, more or less plan it to shoot straight east to the Hoff property and never go north, then the loop has potential to be delayed much longer.
Well, if it goes to the north property line, then when the land to the north develops, we would require them to tie it in and loop it so that it wasn't a dead end.
So they would then develop from property line to finish. You know,
So is water quality come into play at all on this dead end line, or are they gonna circulate enough that that's not a problem?
It should circulate quality reasons, especially with the fire hydrant flushing program, and they've got one on the unit already.
We have one, yeah, we have one by the drive access now, but if we go north, we're gonna require one of the.
There'd be a temporary blow off.
There's a temporary block out there.
Charlotte, you sent me the ordinance and cost sharing development, between landowners. Does, is there anything about going to property line that facilitates that ordinance, or is there anything in the ordinance that would prevent us from cost sharing if we don't go all the way to a property line?
If they couldn't connect on, wouldn't be, even if you put something there, if there was a gap that they couldn't reach it. So if you take it all the way to the east, but you don't go anywhere to the north, and they can't connect on to the north, from the north, then you couldn't ask for anything through there. So they have to be able to, in order for you to get the cost sharing, they have to be able to share the infrastructure. Does that answer your question?
So if we take that line and do what you're proposing, can we get half that money back when they develop the next property on cost sharing?
I don't know, honestly, because there would be some argument that you need that line as well because of the looping that we've talked about. So I'd have to really explore that. I can do that, look into that and see what that would entail, but I think that would be a little bit where you're going through other people's property and they're definitely going to utilize it. That's very easy, but one that gives you as much or more benefit as the person that's going to connect to it sounds a little trickier to see what that cost sharing would be there. So, however, that's from the city's point of view. If you're doing a private agreement with property owners, you can sit down and negotiate whatever you two want, the groups want to negotiate, and you can share costs however you negotiate that out. And our ordinance is not meant to interfere with those kind of negotiations. So if you can sit down with the property owner and say, I can do this, will you pick up this much? And they say, sure. If that's a bigger percentage than what we would have required by ordinance, then by all means, work that out. So, but if you're
There's
relying
nobody
totally,
to work that out with, right? There's no any development on that side.
well, there is a property owner that is looking at developing, but he doesn't have anything right now that I don't think he's got a contract with anybody right now, but he actually has submitted a concept. He's put it on hold, but he has submitted a concept. So we consider that developer is looking at definitely developing. So,
Things like the cost sharing, kind of, secondary to.
first and foremost, you want
benefit of
safety.
having over-
Right.
Yeah,
And as Tyler said, that landowner could tap into the land. And that's wanted to clarify.
so,
And the other thing is I just went to the page that shows a really large detailed landscaping plan with trees and walks and shrubs and very nice decorative thing. And that landowner to the north does come in and, 2 months after you plant all this stuff and put that new walk down, it'll be tragic to watch it all get tore up.
What would be the other option? I mean, obviously you're leaving a utility right of way, but that would be the other option. I guess that comes to you. How are you feeling on your landscaping when you do the front? You're gonna be sad if it gets torn up by the next property owner? Is it worth laying a line for you guys? Nice.
When is the front landscaping going? Maybe I'm
Phasing
confused.
again.
I was kind of thinking that was, you're gonna put the frontal improvements in along the highway. So curb gutter sidewalk park strip, curb gutter park strip sidewalk along the highway. Past that on the private property side, you're leaving that just open for right now. You're not landscaping.
On that phase.
That's their trail phase.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess I kind of have a trouble with that phase because that's right where there should be commercial buildings sitting.
That's probably the benefit for us to put the line out as well as buildings, we can probably just put that line in now and stub out through all of the, if you guys would allow that, run that line all the way through. And then do future stub outs on that line across the sidewalk and everything to get into that property for those buildings.
I'm all about planning ahead.
Yeah.
You see something that we can bring.
Sounds great.
Get on paper and
If we're allowed and you guys would allow us to do that stub off that line with
The
that
service
benefits
lines
us,
in.
you put that line in, and I would be fine.
commercial there, there's a good chance you'll need those fire lines. So not necessarily service lines, because you wouldn't be able to guess if it's 1 inch or 2 inch, what you might
Correct.
need based on what comes, but if you do a fire line, you can likely tap on and do a fire line off of that at a later date, so you stub an 8-inch line or something. West, maybe even 6 inch and well, you might want to stub 8 just to be safeguarding if you have to add another fire hydrant depending on what comes. So if you stub an 8-inch line, the spot or even 2, be wise.
But stuff like that inside that pasture.
Got stuff on the south already too.
So we got your blue already out of it.
Okay, I have a question on the sewer then, unless there's any more water line.
Up on the water lines, so there was another one we just wanted some clarification on, so I think it was question number 2. Comment number 2. Looks like the conversation is to keep the gravity line out of the asphalt, which is fine, it's cheaper, right? But also out of the Logan City right away completely and putting it into the Alders frontage with 40-foot PUE. I've talked with those guys. They're not very excited about a 40-foot PUE on their frontage up there. That messes up a lot of their concepts they have up there. My understanding is that as long as we have a conversation and Logan City's okay with it, that we could still have access to putting that gravity line in the road shoulder. That would maybe not be on the Alder property, or maybe be only 5 feet within the Alder property and not having a 40-foot PUE up there. So I think there's a conversation to be had there. We are fine from our engineering perspective, taking that gravity line, whether it was in 7900 South or in the road shoulder or in Alder's property, they all function. It more comes back to if it doesn't need to be in the roadway by requirement, then yeah, let's not have it there, because that's more costly, right? Next would be if we could get it in the road shoulder or just barely onto the Alder's property without a 40-foot PUE up there. That would be more along lines of what Alder and them would be expecting. The second part of this question is we are contracted to design the gravity line for Blackstone up to the lift station. Our understanding was that from the lift station onward, the force main and whatnot was in the city's court. This on here is asking for us to design the force main back to FICA's property
and hooking into a forced and gravity line back up there. That is not something we're currently contracted to do. That was not our understanding.
Yeah, on that, no, I think that was something that got added in after, and that was not
Okay.
the intent. But back to the gravity.
On the force main.
On the force main.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I don't see any point designing out a piece of force main.
Right, but its location could be key.
Well, that's why we're talking these. So let's get back to the gravity. So I personally have not talked to Logan City to have any idea what they're gonna require along their roadway.
Right.
I would assume they will require sidewalk, park strip, like across the street.
So I have not talked with them either. I know Alex has discussed some with Russ Holly and them, and it sounds like my understanding from my quick conversation with Alex is that Logan's open to this conversation.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, so that's why I don't know how much room there is. If you put a sidewalk in, I'm not exactly sure how much room there is to get both the
right.
gravity sewer in and not be any sidewalk with it. And the pressure sewer.
Right.
So that's why we were thinking we would need some kind of an easement on the Alder property to be able to get those utilities behind the sidewalk versus out in the roadway.
Would it need to be a 40-foot PUD though?
Well, I guess that dimension or that size of the easement, I guess, is debatable, but
Or what depth you're like in the concrete.
We were
it's
down.
15 feet.
Yeah, 15.
So it might be a little deeper than that up near the shoulder of the road because it's higher. The road's higher than the property.
Bring on that line, drive on the side of the road, that 15 feet. When you're digging the 17 foot hole, so trenching while you're closing that road there.
Well,
I'd be surprised that Logan City comes on board really easily with having our utility under their roadway. Most municipalities shy away from that every chance they can,
I'm getting that.
and it's just better for them. But at 15 feet, the more I think about the 40-foot easement, the more it makes sense, especially if there's multiple utilities in that easement, which there will be more than just the force main and that's gravity. I mean, there's gonna be power and other things. And so an easement is gonna be very crucial to have correct in that scenario.
Which we totally agree. I like I said, I think there's just conversations to be had with Alder and what the 40-foot really could be,
That sounds like a great conversation to have with the Alder team,
Yeah.
when it comes to that width and getting that negotiated.
Yeah.
and I do think it does, it kind of matters what Logan's going to require as well, because again, if they don't require sidewalk or don't want a sidewalk, then that may give room to, well, it obviously gives more room for sure.
Yeah.
To be able to put utilities in. There is a storm drain pipe running through there or slash irrigation. I'm not sure which it is. but,
Yeah. Is there a pipe there or a ditch?
No, I believe it's pipe.
Pipe.
I'm pretty sure it's pipe. Yeah.
I know there's a head gate and structure out there, but I wasn't sure if it was pipe.
And I may be wrong. I know down to the river that there's a pipe that comes out near the bridge, and I'm pretty sure it's a storm drain pipe. I just don't exactly know how far back east it flows.
Okay.
But
So it sounds like that is a conversation we still need to have and move ahead with Alder. Sounds like so our understanding would be correct that we need to take the gravity line to the lift station, and that's where our design commitment.
I don't need anything with the
Okay.
pressure pipe.
So that clears that up a lot there. That was one that I had concerned that we need to go into more things and stuff like that. So,
With that, this is a pause, the design. But in order to make sure you connect the construction side, you'll need to get those design pieces and
oh yeah.
okay, I'm just making sure that
Yeah.
because we don't want sewer to end somewhere that
Yeah.
there's a gap because it doesn't work.
Yeah, no, we currently, the way we had it designed.
So as far as design, yes, but as far as Blackstone and getting it there, we need to make sure the sewer gets all the way to the end of the road.
Blackstone's timeline versus
So,
everybody else's.
anyway,
A
Design,
little bit more.
fine. I just want to make sure that on the Blackstone hat that you represent, you gotta get it built so you can drain your sewer.
We'll get
Okay.
our ground to the lift station location, which, we have it generally kind of stubbed out in that hopeful area
Yeah.
right there. But as Max and I coordinate some more, we can get that fine tuned. So I think that's just a part of this conversation with Alders as well. That's where that goes through. So the gravity line. So that, I think that helps a lot on my question with that. The other questions on here were, I think we're just, they're more just markups on the plans and stuff like the BFE line and stuff that we got on there for you. So I think unless you guys have any more questions, those were my major items.
One of the things, just so that we're clear, because there may have been some misunderstanding on the manholes and the base flood elevation, that kind of thing. So, just so we're clear, I think the city's intent is to get the manhole elevations above the base flood elevation.
Right,
But the surrounding land does not necessarily have to be above the base flood elevation. So
right.
if they stick a little bit up in areas wherever you need them to or whatever, I don't think that's a big deal, although we want to be able to have access to them, to be able to, you know, get a Vector truck in there and everything like that, to be able to.
And our intent would be to bring most of the surrounding grade up to that as well, as there's trails and stuff going through there. Unless you get lost in. But the intent, there was kind of a low spot there where we thought it was probably best designed to kind of bring that low spot up anyways, to help. And so that's through the same area those manholes are. So we're just going through rim by rim and comparing that with BFE versus bank elevation. And then taking the judgment call on each one of those as to what do we got to be to make sure we're above that BFE or bank, whichever's higher.
That's exactly like what we were trying to do, but with the info that we had in those plans made that difficult. at the time.
So keep in mind though, if the river does reach the bank upstream, it's behind that higher bank, so to speak. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It may in fact flood behind where.
create a fork up there.
Right, right, exactly. And essentially the bank might be high and almost an island out in there, but you still got water on the east side of that. So yeah, just keep that in mind as you look at your topography. And that, again, you know, you've got all the benefits of the CAD information, all that kind of stuff that we don't have, but just keep that in mind. And if it floods on the back side of that bank, then just go ahead and show that base flood. It doesn't necessarily come back to the bank of the river and come back out. So
Yeah, we'll get it on there. Hopefully then it's more clear for you guys as you look on there and can compare more easily.
That'd be great.
and hopefully we don't get too much flooding. We may be able to survey it this year.
Right.
I only have one other question. I don't know if we can probably answer this, but just so I'm clear, where you guys are requiring us to put in to pay for the pump and the force main. That's not relevant.
We'll go with that and reimburse or pay with impact fees or however we're gonna work out information.
I just need to know how that reimbursement works.
Yeah, yeah, we'll need to get we need to make sure we get it in the development agreement. So that we have, so I have authority to be able to check that. I need to make sure that you know, that get in, both sides of this group needs to make sure that development agreement gets there. And then at that point, we can either pay off of, if it shows the contractor listed out directly, then we can pay directly to contractor or pay directly to you. But however that profit sharing is, just to check from our end, whatever that development agreement fits, then we'll follow that writing. So
And with that said, where you guys are gonna design the lift station and the force main. And then we can have Arnold put that in right when they're doing our contract. Are you guys good with that? So they're doing the rest of the. work.
Yes, you would need to get those bid amounts. You're
Right, we're
okay
gonna
with
have
that,
to do
right,
all that,
Ryan?
but we're
Yeah.
planning just so much.
Arno, if that's your contractor,
And
then-
then we can get with you on a reimbursement plan once it's built up. Okay, that's what I just need to be
Right.
clear of.
just make sure we need to get in the development agreement, get it signed by the council. So I have authorization to sign that check. That's
Okay,
my,
perfect, thank you.
When you put everything out to bid and RONO is working on that right now, or you actually have their bid, where are you at?
We do not have the design for the lift station and the force main at this point,
Okay,
so we will need to get the design so we can take that. out
they
to
just
bid.
know that at some point that's gonna happen.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Because we kind of need to know how to work that. Maybe Ryan, we need to just set up a meeting with perhaps Toby and Mark and
yeah,
get those financial details worked out, because they're a little bit outside the purview of the land use and flood administration.
Correct.
we can work that out.
Yeah, we can do that.
I know where Max is doing it.
Okay,
This is
perfect.
Max's.
Okay, gotcha.
It'll be your contact. Hey, this is the architect chiming in here. It's on phone call here. Let me see, is this mic on? Craig, I'm gonna hold you up to the mic a little bit here.
Okay. Yeah, I just had one follow-up question.
Craig?
Once we have,
Craig, will
Hold
you
on,
say your
Craig.
name?
Oh, yeah, say your name first, Craig.
this is Craig Wilkes with Jacoby Architects.
Okay, you're good.
Okay. Yeah, just one follow-up question on my end. Once we submit the documents with the adjustments that have been discussed today, what is your anticipated timeline for releasing the zoning clearance for permitting?
How quickly do you review that afterwards? How quickly do you think we could review it?
From a zoning perspective?
Yeah.
Who does that review?
That's what we, I mean,
Well, is that not what this meeting's about then?
yes, but if they're gonna make changes,
Oh, I got you. I got you. So
Yeah.
then we have to meet again or
that's what I'm saying. Do you think the changes are significant enough?
no?
We would have to meet again, or can, when they make those changes, we just individually look at the parts that we're individually responsible for, and if they met what we've said, we're good.
Yeah, in my opinion, nothing we've talked about today has anything to do with zoning. So as far as I'm concerned, the zoning is absolutely okay to approve today.
So it
Catch
would
that,
just,
Craig?
so then it would just be a matter of reviewing the corrections to make sure, and that just kind of depends on what everybody's time frame is when those correction comes in. If there's conferences or stuff, then it takes us a little longer. If we're all here and we can sit down and independently do our things, then a little quicker, so.
Yeah, Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think on our end, those adjustments are pretty quick.
They are. I think the one that requires the most conversation with other parties is gonna be where that gravity line gets placed up on the north edge of Alder's property. But I wouldn't foresee those to be long conversations. You know, they're a pretty active party. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, so then I guess within a week or two, we could anticipate that we could have that in place and then send that to the county so that they can stamp our documents. Is that
Agreed.
is accurate? Yeah. And sorry, just one more clarification there. Does Providence City stamp the civil and the landscape sheets and the cover sheet of the entire set, and then the county stamps everything else?
I would suggest in this case that we sign electronically, if you're okay with that, Tyler, just submitting it as a PDF. And because there's so many sheets, and then I would just stamp. Well, I don't really stamp, I just sign every sheet and put a date on it.
Our civil stuff will all just be digitally stamped and signed. So.
Okay. So you would do that for the civil and the landscape sheets then, and then the county would take care of the rest?
Yeah, I don't know what the county does, but yeah, we would do the civil and landscape.
The county would take
Can
care
you
of
do
all
the
the
structural?
Yeah, the county will do the structural and the architectural, electrical, mechanical, et cetera. And then did you want to, we currently have a spot on the cover page too, for the entire set. Do you want that to stay on there, or should we remove that?
I'm good either way. It doesn't matter to me.
Okay. So we'll leave it on there so that I think it's helpful for reference that these are kind of the parties who are reviewing and signing the documents. That can be referenced on the cover page, and then a person could go throughout the set and see the different signatures based or on the different sheets. So we'll plan on that if that's okay.
Yep, that's fine.
One of the things on that to keep in mind, the county is going to need dimensions and measurements, and they're going to need landmarks out there. So generally we go off property lines, so they need survey stakes, and then they need dimensions from survey stakes as to where footings and stuff go, to make sure that the building is sitting where we say it's going to be sitting. So that they do generally require proof of property and then the dimensions from that to where your foundation's gonna be.
So you're saying for inspection purposes?
Yep, so that they know you're setting that building where it's supposed to set. And even though this is a big, huge piece of property and you got plenty of room as far as setbacks go, where we are dealing with the flood, base flood elevations and that's why the dimensioning is really important, and having those staked out so the county makes sure that you get that building where it's in its most safe location for that type of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll make sure the contractor is aware of that. They'll be using, I'm pretty sure this team will be using kind of very sophisticated coordinates to get everything laid out with the GPS and all of that. That's what we've seen from this contractor on previous projects, and so we would anticipate the same on this project as well. So that should be very accurate.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else, Greg?
That's it for me. Any other questions?
I don't think I have any.
Colton, NOI, slip and all of that, have you reviewed that? Have they?
Yeah, it looks good. And I looked at the storm pond layout and things, so I don't have any concerns as far as that goes.
All right. Ryan, any comments you wanna?
No additional ones. Oh, thanks. Appreciate you guys working with it.
All right,
Out of curiosity, Tyler, where does the pond, the stormwater pond fall relative to the base flood or to the floodplain, I should say? Is it out of the floodplain?
It, I'd have to look on there. It's in that area. Yeah, but it might be part in, part out, but elevation wise, it horizontally, it might be part in, part out, but vertically I have to check for you.
Okay.
So.
I don't have any further.
I guess with that question, Max, hopefully when we put this line in there for you and give you those elevations, that'll be more apparent.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the things. Those are the types of things I'm looking for. And I think, you know, if it were to get flooded, so to speak, in the 100-year flood, I don't know that that's necessarily the end of the world. However, if it were to back up your pipes and get to the parking lot or something like that, that might be more of an issue.
Yeah.
And just keep in mind that if it's in the base flood elevation or within the floodplain, oftentimes on the edge of those floodplains, there's a lot of debris and everything. And so it may be that you get, you know, some damage done to it after, you know, do some cleanup and things like that after the flood. So.
and you probably already know this, but I learned it when the flood came through in 2011. The river gets to create new boundary lines. So no, I'm serious. We had people that lived along Spring Creek and where the creek went. The state did not come back and move the creek back where it was. The state, the new creek line went where the new creek line went. So I think that that's probably still their MO.
Yeah, it is.
So it's just something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. If there is flooding, well, I shouldn't say if, when, we hope it's not significant flooding, but when flooding occurs, if it moves the banks, then the state is not going to come back in and move those banks back unless the laws change between now and when that happens. So just a FYI. Since there's no other comments that I hearing, then I would entertain a motion that we accept and prepare a floodplain development permit, which I will, this permit, well, I'll send it. Kobe, I don't think you're on my email list. Do you want me to add you to my email list when I send stuff out on this?
It'll get to them. So-
Okay. Alrighty, there's a couple of pages of this permit that you will need to fill out, and there's some pages that I will fill out, but we can't really finish the actual permit until we have those corrected drawings. So what I'm asking the group to do is to approve a floodplain development permit that will be prepared in association with the corrected drawings, along with approving the commercial site plan for the Blackstone as presented with the conditions that will be corrected on the future drawings that are coming in. Is that sound?
With those conditions, I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
And actually, can I amend it just a little minute? It's not just the conditions we've talked about here, it's the conditions on the staff report, plus any conditions we've talked about in here to make those corrections. So just to be very clear, is that all right?
Mhm.
Is that all right, Max?
Yep.
Okay, all right, so the motion was, Rob Stapley made the motion, Max Pierce seconded the motion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you so much. When will you have some firm, this is not land use, this is finance. When will you have some firm numbers to put into some type of a development agreement, do you think?
We're pretty close.
Okay,
I'd say within a week or two, we'd be everything lined up ready to go.
okay.
Financial numbers, what?
Yes, for reimbursement purposes into the.
Reimbursement purposes, we'll need to get the drawings first before we can go out and pay it off. So that's gonna be a little bit. The numbers for the total bill will be
Okay,
minus the lift station and the force main. Once we have the drawings that we can go, we'll send that to Arnold first and bid it. And then we'll probably get a couple extra bids just to make sure we're right there. So how many bids would you guys like us to obtain on that?
At least 3 is what we prefer.
3? Okay. Anybody that you would prefer us to go to? We'll have Arnold bid at once. Is there any local people you'd like us to have bid? Okay. When would you think you'd have the drawings and that lift station on that?
Well, some of it's subject to the easements. We've got easements besides that property. We've got property further to the east for the pressure main that's got to get solved. So those are going to be the hang up on some of them. Right now, they're not holding us up, but they will be shortly. So
That's why discussions that you have with the Alder team are gonna be good to probably include not just the 90-degree turn, where it hits third south and heads west to the lift station. And there's gonna be a gravity / force main that needs to go across over the exterminations and through up to the thickest area. So all that easements along with the infrastructure that needs finalized and designed, all needs to be negotiated and discussed so that we don't have this reoccurring problem when it comes to going back to the same teams and saying a little more and a little more, and let's think the whole project through best we can.
any other questions? Okay. When's your next meeting?
I'll go meet with Ryan after this.
Okay, all right.
We do need to approve the minutes, though, don't we? Or
Did I miss
previous
that?
minutes?
Sorry. Is that on the agenda? I
Yep.
skipped right over it. I apologize. Okay. I would, yep, it is right there. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from March 9th, 2023.
That motion.
I'll second it.
Does anybody have any discussion or corrections that they,
Looked good to me.
Looked good.
okay, I thought so as well. All right, motion by Max Pierce, second by Rob Staples. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That concludes our business. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Well, second.
Motion by Rob Staples, second by Max Pierce. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.